everyone, and welcome back to the channel. And we're here on episode 2 of the tips and tricks, where I show you how you can go about, testing and experimenting, so that when you get into the hobby of customizing action figures, you don't have to ruin your investment. So in the previous video, I showed you some quick ideas on how you can do your testing, and how on what cheap toys, and you can get some cheap stuff at a dollar store. Going by that, files. You can use nail files. There are different grits that you can use to on this one I didn't do it, but actually maybe on the back, I don't remember. But you can transformers, most figures actually, since they're made from plastic, will have a seam. So if you want to get rid of the seam, just use some sand, nail sanding files. You can get one that's multi-grit, that one that has a smooth, slightly rough and rougher, just different grades. You can cut them up into little sticks, to get tighter areas. So yeah, cheap sanding paper, cheap nail files. I explained, that you can use nail brushes instead of, instead of going into the art store and using the expensive, brushes. You can get pretty good brushes, going into the cosmetic section. So the brushes use actual sable hairs, so you can get different types for different applications. Although I do own a lot of brand paint brushes, right? So this is Roland Cornell. I know I do have like a Raphael brush somewhere. But yeah, you don't need to start off with the really expensive stuff, especially if you're starting out. Just get yourself a decent brush, $2, $3, and load up on nail brushes. Those are pretty good. So what I wanted to show you in this video, which I mentioned briefly in the previous episode, on this one I was testing out some paints that I had laying around that I wasn't sure if they still worked and whatnot. And for this test that I was doing, I had seen painters, model painters, use Windex to thin their paints. So I wanted to see how that works for me. So I have here, Windex or car windshield washer fluid. It's pretty much the same thing. So I had seen people use that to thin their paints and clean their airbrushes and all that. So I wanted to see how it worked for me. Because usually what I use to thin out my paints after doing several tests is it's a brand of an antiseptic. It's called microdaxin. But any antiseptic works. The thing is, you don't want to use tap water to thin your paints. The different minerals, and everything that's in your tap water is not the best as far as keeping the integrity and the pigmentation of your paints. So I did a lot of experimenting, and I had this bottle of antiseptic at home, and I tried it, and I found out that the paints react well with it. I think I showed it in the previous video, but this is paint that's thinned out using the antiseptic. This is the paint that I used to paint one of the Optimus Primes, and that project was over almost 2 weeks ago, and the paint still fresh, still flows. Um, you know, this works. As opposed to when I did a test recently. So I wanted to see if thinning white paint with the Windex, since it's blue, if it would tint the white paint, because I hadn't seen that. And for the most part, it doesn't. But now that I was looking at this recently, there's me knocking the camera and the microphone over. Probably can't tell from the camera. Well, there is like a maybe here. There is like a slight blue hue up here in this area over here. But for the most part, the white stayed white. So I guess you can use Windex without, you know, tinting your white paint. The thing about using Windex, as you can see here, this test was done over the weekend, a couple days ago, and the paint is already dry. As opposed to, here's me using the primer that I thinned. It's still wet. So using cling wrap, if you don't have the caps for these cups, you can use cling wrap and rubber band, and it'll help seal it, keep whatever's inside sealed. And you can see here, it's the primer is still still liquidy. So that primer was mixed 2 weeks ago. So yeah, using a Windex will dry the paint considerably. So that's what I wanted to test on this figure with this paint that I had. If you thin the paint right to the right consistency, you can apply it and not leave any brush strokes. You just have to go in on thinner coats, and yeah, but the paint will dry in almost like 5 to 10 minutes. It'll be dry to the touch, but it won't be completely cured. I think I mentioned it in the other video. I touched it and it still felt kind of tacky. So once it's dry, you can go ahead and use a blow dryer to completely dry out the paint, and it'll feel smooth to the touch. So that was the experiment using just using the Windex, right? So I then did a mix of Windex plus antiseptic, and I think this was used only using I'm sorry, I painted it white. The white was the mix with the just the Windex, and I applied the white over some primed areas, and then the paint is what had the 50-50 mix, and it still dried up pretty quick. So there's something in the Windex that makes the paint dry faster, because just using the antiseptic, as you can see, it helps retain the paint to stay a little wet longer. It'll enable you to, as you're brushing it on, for the paint to settle in time, so it won't leave any brush marks. So yeah, I recommend not using tap water. I do recommend using like the Windex. Just be aware that dry your paint faster than if you're using water. And if you don't want to use the Windex, go ahead and find an antiseptic in your pharmacy. It'll keep the paint, it'll maintain the pigmentation and keep the paint hydrated, you could say, for much longer. Um, Not that it takes forever for the paint to cure. It's just not gonna cure as fast as the Windex because you're still gonna be applying thin coats of paint. So just leaving the paint, you know, air drying for, you know, 15-20 minutes. It should be dry, but you know, it's more forgiving using the antiseptic as you're applying the paint. It won't be drying pretty much as fast as the Windex. That as soon as you apply it, the paint is already drying. It's like using the Tamiya paints that are solvent based. Even though they say they're acrylic, they're solvent based, kind of like, so they're almost like, like alcohol. As soon as you apply it, it starts drying. So there's that. So yeah, just like I said, testing out paints. These paints are pretty good. As I was testing the color that I had, strong pigmentation. It's a pretty strong blue. I had found another paint that I had opened a long time ago, I guess. It was hard. It almost felt like rubber. And I thinned it out. It was a brown color. Sorry if it looks like, yeah, what I don't want to say, but it's a brown, substance. But yeah, this thing was, almost like rubber. And I don't want to open it because I don't want to spill it. But I used the antiseptic to slowly thin out the paint, and hear that? It revived it. So yeah, it's like I said, I do recommend using an antiseptic instead of just either, well, again, up to you, Windex, or if if you're airbrushing, you can probably just use the Windex because you want the paint to dry quick as you're applying different layers. But if you're hand brushing, you want something that'll take a bit longer to dry up as you apply the coats so that the paint settles and not leave any brush strokes. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Thanks.